4,050 kilograms. That is the amount of uranium Iran currently possesses, enriched to 60% purity. Enough, say nuclear experts, to fuel several nuclear devices if pushed a final step further. This is not just a statistic. It is a number that has governments pacing their offices at midnight and intelligence analysts recalculating risk scenarios for the Persian Gulf every morning. But here is the paradox. Despite years of warnings, sanctions, negotiations, and threats, the solution to this crisis already exists. It has been demonstrated, verified, and put into practice before. And yet, it sits unused on the table because the one country that could make it real is the same country the United States cannot allow to win. Why would Washington refuse the very mechanism it demands? Who actually controls the outcome of the world's most dangerous nuclear standoff? And what does it mean when the answer is not the White House, but the Kremlin? On a gray morning in St. Petersburg, the arrival of Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, was not a matter of protocol. It was a message. The world saw a diplomatic visit. Those who understand the mechanics of power saw something else. In the middle of active nuclear negotiations with the United States, Iran bypassed Washington entirely and flew straight to Vladimir Putin. The signal was unmistakable. The solution to the uranium crisis would not come from American pressure, but from a Russian offer that already had precedent. For 3 full years, beginning in 2015, Russia took custody of Iran's enriched uranium, 97% of it, under a mechanism designed by the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and supervised by the International Atomic Energy Agency. The arrangement worked. No diversions, no violations. The IAEA certified compliance again and again. But in 2018, the U.S. withdrew. The architecture collapsed. Iran rebuilt its stockpile. The clock started ticking again, and the world returned to the edge. If questions like this one are the kind you find yourself turning over long after the story ends, you are exactly the audience this work is made for. Subscribing takes a moment, and it means the next story finds you. And when you're finished here, leave a thought below. The conversation that happens there is where the real analysis begins. Now, Iran's 4,050 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium hang in the balance. The technical detail matters. 60% is not weapons grade, but the leap to 90% with the right centrifuges and a political decision is a matter of weeks, not years. Every American administration has made the same demand: remove the uranium from Iran, not just reduce or pause it. Russia steps in and says, "We will take it." On paper, this is an answer to Washington's central concern. In reality, it is where the story becomes more complicated than most headlines admit. Washington's refusal was swift. Not a negotiation, not a request for verification, just a no. The official rationale is clear. America wants the uranium out, but not in Russian hands. The U.S. has spent years trying to reduce global reliance on Russian nuclear fuel and services. Allowing Moscow to process and potentially recycle Iranian uranium would deepen Russian leverage in the energy market, especially across Europe and Asia. It would grant the Kremlin diplomatic credit as the architect of stability and a new source of enriched material to supply the world. That is not a small concession. It is a gift to an adversary, one Washington is not willing to give. But the alternative is not a safer world. It is the crisis we are living through right now. Iran's uranium stockpile growing, maritime tensions in the Strait of Hormuz rattling global oil prices, and a diplomatic window that shrinks by the week. The calculus becomes brutal. Deny Moscow a win, but pay the price in instability and market volatility. That price is not theoretical. During the peak of recent tensions, Russian energy revenues soared, hundreds of millions of euros per day, off the back of instability in the Gulf. Every day the crisis continues, Russia benefits, not marginally, but substantially. When the Kremlin spokesman says the uranium offer is still on the table, hold two realities in your mind. If Washington accepts, Russia gains control and credit. If Washington refuses, Russia profits from chaos. This is not a coincidence. This is the advantage of being the indispensable actor in a crisis you helped design. There is another player moving behind the scenes: China. Before Arakchi's flight to St. Petersburg, he called Wang Yi, China's foreign minister. China's silence throughout this episode is not absence, it is strategy. 3 days before the St. Petersburg meeting, China and Russia sat down with the International Atomic Energy Agency to discuss Iran's nuclear program. That sequence is not random. It is a coordinated preparation. China keeps buying Iranian oil at favorable prices, sustaining Iran's economy and reducing the pressure that sanctions are meant to create. Iran can wait. China guarantees it. In high-stakes negotiation, the side that can afford to wait almost always wins. What came next would prove that every assumption about control in this crisis was already out of date. While Arakchi was preparing to fly north, Pakistani mediators carried a separate Iranian proposal to Washington: split the crisis in two, open the Strait of Hormuz, and stabilize global markets now. Give Washington a visible win. Handle the nuclear issue on a separate track, on a slower timeline. This is a classic negotiation tactic. Reduce immediate pain for your opponent, but keep your leverage on the core issue. Simultaneously, the Moscow visit reinforced the second track. Russia already has the means, the legal framework, and the IAEA's trust to handle a uranium transfer. Iran isn't asking for trust in theory. It is pointing to a mechanism that worked, with proof and precedent. By the end of the weekend, two clear exits had been offered, one for immediate relief, one for structural resolution. Washington's response was to withdraw from scheduled talks and say, "Call us." That sequence, two real options presented, disengagement as the answer, transformed the diplomatic narrative. Now, every neutral observer and regional power saw a simple story. Iran offered solutions, Russia provided a mechanism, and the United States said no. The American concern is real, but the cost of refusal became visible to all. That single decision set off a chain of events that most observers still have not fully mapped, and the consequences are still unfolding today. Inside St. Petersburg, the real negotiation is not whether Russia will take Iran's uranium. The two sides have already agreed in principle. The real work is now about specifics, storage conditions, IAEA oversight, timelines, and most importantly, restrictions on what Russia can do with the material after transfer. Washington's core objection, Moscow's ability to leverage the uranium globally, is the detail under scrutiny. If Russia agrees to binding, verifiable limits, the American position weakens. If not, the impasse hardens. The next move is already mapped. The proposal will circle back to Tehran, then through intermediaries to Washington. Each side will be forced to declare, in public or in private, which cost they are willing to bear. At the breaking point, abstraction ends. The phone line that Donald Trump once described as the channel for resolving the uranium crisis is silent. Not because Iran has lost America's number, but because Iran is now in the room with the only actor holding the solution. When the call finally comes, the terms will already be written. The solution is on the table. The choice is who will pick it up and who will have to explain why they did not. Here is the ledger. Iran retains its nuclear leverage, enough enriched uranium to move to weapons grade in weeks. Russia owns the role of indispensable partner, whether as custodian or as beneficiary of instability. China guarantees Iran's patience and breathing room, quietly shaping the terms of engagement from the sidelines. The United States stands with its core demand unmet, its mechanism for resolution blocked by its own strategic fear of empowering Moscow. The immediate cost is measured in oil prices, regional risk, and diplomatic capital. The deeper cost is in the erosion of American credibility and the shifting landscape of alliances. For every day that the uranium remains in Iran, every day that the Strait of Hormuz remains tense, the perception grows. Washington can demand, but cannot deliver. In the medium term, the refusal to accept Russia's offer may close the last window for a verifiable transfer under international supervision. Iran's position hardens, Russia's leverage grows, and China's silence becomes the backdrop against which new alliances are drawn. What never happens is just as important. There is no reduction in Iran's stockpile, no relief to global markets, no restoration of the nuclear deal's original architecture. The world adapts to a new normal where the center of gravity has shifted east, and every future negotiation starts from a weaker point for Washington. The principle buried inside this moment is simple. Power in global crises does not belong to the actor with the loudest demand, but to the actor with the credible mechanism to resolve what everyone fears most. The question worth sitting with is not whether the American refusal was justified, but whether the cost of that refusal is one Washington or its allies can afford to keep paying. Share what you think in the comments.